Menstruation became a symbol of defiance and struggle for the women who endured violence during the Holocaust. The female prisoners had to face shame while bleeding in public. Women were not only forced to live under miserable and disgusting situations, but their lives were also cut short in these camps. The experiences of Jewish women were different from their male counterparts in a number of different ways. Their sexual orientation introduced a type of intersectionality to their struggles as prisoners in the camp. Welcome to History Rediscovered. In this episode, we discuss the sad reality of how Nazi women dealt with menstruation in concentration camps. Menstruation is rarely a topic that comes to mind when we think about the Holocaust and has been largely avoided as an area of historical research. This is regrettable, as periods are a central part of women's experience. The study of menstruation, a topic that has until now been perceived as irrelevant, or even disgusting, gives us a far more nuanced view of women's experience of the Holocaust. Menstruation has been a taboo historically that even the word taboo comes from the Polynesian term tapu, meaning sacred, and menstrual flow. That's right, menstruation is the original taboo. Menstruation in concentration camps. In the late 20th century, sanitary resources such as pads and tampons were not yet introduced for women. Medicine at the time, at least when compared today, was still a joke. They were only beginning to understand how the human body worked. An understanding of the female body's inner workings has always lagged behind that of the male body. Since menstruation has always been considered a private affair in many cultures, women who were not in concentration camps at that time used to deal with it from the comfort of their homes. Women on their periods were seen as weak, sometimes barred from attending school or encouraged to perform certain exercises to boost productivity at work. As a result, it was beneficial for women to conceal their periods in order to advance in their personal and professional lives. In some countries, women used sea sponges as tampons during their menstruation cycle. They would put them directly in the vagina. In Egypt, they put a piece of flax on a wooden rod and then used it to collect menstrual blood. Women used wool in the Roman Empire, paper in Japan, while vegetable fibers in Indonesia as a pad. In ancient Greece, menstrual blood was carefully collected to make a sacrifice to the goddess Artemis. However, for the Jewish women incarcerated in the camps, menstruation became an indelible and ugly aspect of their public life. Firstly, there was a conspicuous dearth of rags and a lack of opportunities to wash private parts with water. Water in Sector B was available only in the kitchen barracks, and the women had no access to it. Unable to wash, they went around dirty. They had to perform their bodily functions in unscreened outside privies. The barracks were frequently damp, and lice and rats were an enormous problem for them. It is therefore hardly strange that epidemics of contagious diseases erupted frequently. Consequently, the bleeding that came from periods stained their bodies and clothes. In retrospect, it should be remembered that period at that time was frowned upon with repulsion and disgust. The cells had no beds, furniture and mattresses. The women in pain due to periods slept on straw-stuffed mattresses laid on the floor with no access to painkillers whatsoever. Secondly, the testimonies of the survivors further reveal how women had to rely on rags to clean themselves during the monthly cycles. Auschwitz survivor Romani in her testimony notes that women took the undergarment slip they received, ripped it and made little rags, and guarded those little rags like they were gold. A rag for periods was difficult because menstruating women struggled to keep it in place. As a result, it was extremely difficult to avoid staining and spill. Some wore shorts under their garments to keep the rag in place. Despite this, there was still a risk of staining, but the woman had no other choice apart from what they could use. After usage, you rinsed them out a little bit, put them under the mattress and dried them, then nobody else could steal the little rags. Rags were precious and, being so, they were not immune to theft. Some people compensated by using other materials. Gerda Weissman recalls, "It was a hard thing because you had no supplies, you know. You had to find little pieces of paper and some things from under the loos. As well as being stolen, they were given away, borrowed and traded." Young girls who were experiencing periods for the first time could rely on the older and much experienced women for emotional support. Testimonies reveal how many orphan survivors received assistance from older women, who took on both a sisterly and motherly role in helping these young girls before they experienced potential amenorrhea. Older women usually lost their period within the first 2 or 3 months of imprisonment. Some teenagers experienced their first period in the camps alone, separated from their families or orphaned. In such cases, older prisoners provided help and advice. Tanya Kapila, a Ukrainian in Muldorf, was 13 when she started her periods. She did not know what was happening and shed many tears. She was scared that she was going to die and did not know what to do. Also, Trude Levi, a Hungarian Jew who works as a nursing teacher, also recalled, "We don't have water to wash ourselves, we don't have underwear. We can't go anywhere. Everything sticks to us, and to me, it may be the most inhuman of all." At that time, many women had menstrual periods that were inhumane. Women were forced to stop menstruating. It is documented that the Nazis sought a surreptitious way to sterilize large populations of women. In the history of the Holocaust, it has been known that 98% of the women placed by the Nazis in camps suffered amenorrhea, or the cessation of their menstrual periods. Compellingly, the researchers say that large quantities of sex steroids were produced in Germany during World War II. For example, correspondence describing a meeting of top Nazi officials at Führer headquarters in July 1942 revealed that the topic of discussion was the sterilization of Jewesses. At the meeting, it was decided that a method should be found which would lead to sterilization of persons without their knowledge, and that experiments to devise such a scheme would be conducted at Auschwitz. It is not understood as to why Nazis paid attention to the production of steroids and manufacturing hormones during the time of the war. Officials ordered those working on the sterilization of Jewish women not to keep written records. The study authors are unable to know exactly which chemicals would have been used in the camps. A woman who worked in the kitchens at Auschwitz gave a description of how packets of grain-like, very light pink chemicals were added to the soup to ensure that women don't get their periods. This soup was distributed to the female inmates only, not to the men, and was never consumed by the guards. One woman, who happened to be menstruating on the day of her arrival, said she was forced to swallow a pill that put an end to her period. This report was corroborated by other survivors who said they saw women being pulled out of line for pills or injections, leading the women to stop menstruating. Evidence shows that 98% of survivors of the camps experienced complications during pregnancy, and most women were not able to have children. Of 197 confirmed pregnancies, around a quarter ended in miscarriage, while a further 6.6% resulted in stillbirths. 16% of study participants were able to carry more than 2 babies to term, despite wanting more children desperately. The impact of bad sanitation of camps for women. The negative conditions in the concentration camps contributed to the spread of disease greatly. With female genitalia being so delicate, women had infections. There were no working sewer systems, so wastes were distributed everywhere. The prisoners had few to no showers. There was a lack of fresh water, so they couldn't bathe themselves or wash their hands. Diseases spread more frequently because there was low-quality food or starvation that weakened the immunity system. Most of the times women were starved, which contributed to the end of menstruation because their bodies were weak. There was overcrowding and close contact between prisoners, so they could catch infections easily.